Colorado, we find ourselves at a crossroads. This November, we may see some well-earned and needed legal recognition for same-sex partners, though at the same time, we may see our equality stripped away as quickly as it began. Tonight, we're going to discuss what legal measures are headed our way and what we can do to begin to make marriage equality a reality. We have with us tonight Jeffrey Shaw, the co-chair of the Colorado Stonewall Democrats, who are helping to educate and advocate for GLBT issues in the Democratic Party. I'd also like to introduce Phil Campbell, the founder of the Colorado Clergy for Equality in Marriage, the director of ministry studies at the Iliff School of Theology, and a minister for the United Church of Christ. Thank you both for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Well, Jeff, why don't you begin tonight by just telling us what we are going to see in November?
Well, the one item that we know will be on the ballot is Referendum F, which would establish domestic partnerships for same-sex couples. The Democratic-controlled majority in the state legislature, along with the help of 6 Republicans, passed this item out to the ballot for the fall. This would establish domestic partnership rights for same-sex couples that would be the same privileges, opportunities, and responsibilities as spouses would have in the normal marriages. However,
we're not using
it is not
marriage. Right. So what are the main differences between domestic partners and marriage? Why are we avoiding that word?
The big difference between marriage and domestic partnerships is probably the portability between states. The fact that domestic partnership in Colorado cannot be taken into Kansas or Iowa. It is only in the state of Colorado. Federally, you can't cross the state lines. So it's just, the opportunity isn't there for marriage at this point, unless you do it within your own state, as Massachusetts did.
And it seems that marriage has a lot of religious connotations to it.
Well, it does. This is one of the most confusing aspects. In fact, this is probably the place where church and state are most intertwined in our country, and really does add to a lot of the confusion, because marriage is both a civil institution and a legally recognized partnership in the country, both federally and at the state level, and it also is a religious institution. We talk about it as a fitting estate for 2 persons who love each other and wish to commit themselves to live their lives together, and from a religious perspective, in the sight of God. And so we use the word for really 2 very different things. And what we're talking about in terms of the legislation is providing, as far as the state of Colorado can, the same legal rights and responsibilities for a same-sex couple that currently exist for a heterosexual couple. This would not influence any of the federal legislation regarding marriage, because the state cannot impose that on the federal government, or as Jeff said, it's not portable to another state. But this is an act that the state of Colorado and its citizens can take to assure fairness in our state.
So is it a civil answer to a religious question? Or religious institution?
Well, I think the state has a compelling interest in stable relationships. And that's why the state is involved in the marriage business. And so I don't think that the state's interest is a religious interest, although some people believe that mistakenly, and some of the rhetoric suggests that. But I think that really witnesses against what we really stand for in this country, which is a separation of church and state. And so I think that what the domestic partnership referendum does is really address a civil rights issue in our state, not a religious practice.
Jeff, do you find the Democratic Party trying to steer this issue away from religion?
No, I don't think the Democratic Party is trying to steer it at all. The Democratic Party has been fully supportive. In fact, as of today, June 14, which is Flag Day, the Democratic Party has endorsed opposition to the marriage amendment, which is a ban on same-sex marriage, which we have not even mentioned yet, and has come out in support of or endorsing domestic partnership. The Democratic Party is not interested in trying to coin the religious stance on it. The Democratic Party looks at it from the political point of view, and our religious friends within the party and outside of the party are the ones that take care of the religious side.
So is it a political idea not to use the word marriage?
The word marriage is volatile to a lot of people because they see it as a religious And some people will see it as, you know, if two males get married, that for some reason that affects their heterosexual marriage. I don't see how that can be. I have absolutely no understanding of that thought process. And I've even heard political people say, what in the world has this got to do with my marriage to my wife? Mm. And in that sense, it's you know, the political side comes in and ties in with the religious side. But probably Phil has more that he could say on that, because it is so much tied into the religious side of things.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I do think it really is a deep-seated emotional reaction, and most people's reaction is something they probably don't even understand on the conscious level, because of whatever it's rooted in, that there's some feeling about marriage. Perhaps that's what makes marriage so important, in a sense, and why, in my view, I believe in marriage equality, is that there is, as someone said, nobody writes poetry about civil unions. And so it's part of the way we talk about love. So I'm fully supportive of marriage equality and believe that marriage is the way two people who love each other should be able to live together. And so I support that as a religious conviction. But I know other people have religious convictions opposed to mine. And we, again, in this country are founded on a principle of freedom of religion. And so from a religious perspective, I want to be able to practice my religion that supports love and equality in marriage for same-sex couples, as I support love and marriage for heterosexual couples. But I know others with other religious convictions are going to be opposed to that and say that religiously they can't go there. And I say that's fine. But we also live in a society of law, in a society committed to equal protection under the law. And that's really what this domestic partnership referendum is about, is assuring equal protection under the law. And it's simply unfair for us to perpetuate the inequality that currently exists. And so as a civil rights issue, quite apart from my religious convictions, I'm absolutely supportive of this and believe that citizens throughout our state can support it regardless of their religious commitments, one way or the other.
It seems that, you know, when you're watching TV or reading the newspaper, it seems that almost all the opposition is religiously based. Is that true? Are most religions against this? Are most people who are actively religious against civil unions? Or is this just something that we're getting from the media?
Well, there really are a wide variety and wide spectrum of religious perspectives. It's just not true that there is a religious position on any issue, any more than there is one political position on any issue. So I think that's one of the things that's really important, and part of our group, Colorado Clergy for Equality in Marriage, exists to dispel that misinformation about religious perspective. Now, having said that, probably the majority of those who practice religious faith might say that they're opposed to marriage equality or can't understand marriage equality as part of their religious faith. But again, we don't count majority when we talk about religious freedom in this country. In fact, what we are founded upon is protecting the rights of minority viewpoints, religious and otherwise. And so we wouldn't want to impose one religious position, and that's really what it does when we say that we want to put in our Constitution a ban against same-sex marriage. And the Constitution should never be used that way in a society committed to equal protection under the law and the rights of all people.
Mm. Well, you had mentioned not all political parties are the same. Jeff, you're with the Democratic Party. Is this a purely Republican-based opposition to civil unions or equal marriage?
No, I don't think it is necessarily a Republican-based opposition. I think there are a great number of Republicans who are in favor of fair and equal protection under the law. And I believe that you will find, well, for instance, in the state legislature, at least 6 legislators voted for the domestic partnership referendum that are from the Republican Party. So the support is there. There is an element of the religious right within the Republican Party that would be opposed, but there are a great many fair-minded Republicans and independents who really see this as a fairness and equality issue, and not in some other way, some other evil way. Right.
So what, you said that there were some other referendums that are coming up in November. What are those?
Well, the petition system in Colorado allows for people to petition onto the ballot different issues. One that Phil has already referenced is an amendment that would establish marriage as being between a man and a woman. And the reason we oppose that as Democrats, and certainly as Stonewall Democrats, is that it's already in statutory state law. We don't need redundant, unnecessary language put into a constitution, nor do we need to enshrine discrimination in a written body that is supposed to give rights, explain rights, not limit rights. So that's why we're very much opposed to it. Secondarily, there is word out that Will Perkins and Kevin Lundberg will be submitting an amendment, and this would be again as an amendment that would deny or redefine domestic partnership as being illegal in the state of Colorado, and civil unions and anything similar to marriage as being illegal in the state of Colorado. Now, they're putting this up as an amendment, which means it would trump the referendum, which is a statutory law referendum. So if Mr. Perkins and Mr. Lundberg are able to get enough signatures on the petitions to put that one forth, then our side, meaning those who are in support of domestic partnership, will put up another very simply worded amendment that simply will say domestic partnership is not marriage, which then hopefully will trump the other one.
Could that work against us by saying domestic partnership is not marriage?
You know, there's always the argument that we want to go all the way and call it marriage. And I think a lot of us would love to be able to do that. In the Northeast, they do that. And marriage is the big thing. They've got civil unions in 2 states, marriage in Massachusetts. They talk marriage equality all the time. This is the West. You know, we're different in Colorado. And domestic partnership is a step in the right direction. It establishes the rights of same-sex couples to have all the rights and benefits that the heterosexual couples have. Rights of inheritance, rights to visit your lover in a hospital without having a family come in and deny you those rights, which is what has happened. It's very necessary to get this kind of a law on the books to protect the rights of the same-sex couples. And notice it's not necessarily gay, it's just same-sex couples.
So what are your thoughts on these two?
Yeah. Well, I think that domestic partnerships are absolutely a good first step, and they're a politically realistic step. And that's the way politics works. People who have all sorts of different views come together and coalesce around something that the majority can agree upon. And I really believe the majority of Coloradans can agree that it's fundamentally fair to treat people equally under the law. And so we fully support this step, even though as Clergy for Equality in Marriage, we also support marriage equality. Sure. But that's the way, again, as I said, politics works, that we're always going to work together in coalition and compromise and find something that we can all agree upon. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I also believe the tide of history is moving toward equality. You know, Martin Luther King Jr. said, the arc of history is long, but it bends toward justice. And I think just as was the case at one time, not very many years ago, really, that it was illegal for interracial couples to marry in this country. I believe there will come a time when it will seem as natural for a same-sex couple to be able to marry as it is now. Not that discrimination does not exist currently, and still does, of course, against interracial couples, but legally the full protection of the law allows that. And I believe that's the direction we're moving. But that's not where we are in Colorado now. That's not what's on the ballot. That's really not what needs to be debated in the political realm. The fact of the matter is what we're talking about is fundamental fairness under the law, and domestic partnerships provide that.
Basic civil rights.
That's absolutely.
Absolutely. And it seemed like there was a lot of religious arguments against interracial marriage as well. Though, as we were talking about earlier, some of the great leaders of the civil rights movements were religious.
That's absolutely true. And again, that's an example of what I was talking about. There were persons whose commitments on on any particular issue are because of their religious convictions. And you're going to find people who had strong religious convictions that opposed civil rights, but many of the great civil rights leaders, including, of course, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was a committed, active, practicing Christian. And so there's a long tradition of social justice in progressive Christianity, in Reform Judaism, in many other faith traditions. And certainly persons who are committed to social justice as part of their religious practice are supportive of equal rights. The Interfaith Alliance of Colorado, for instance, has endorsed the domestic partnership referendum. And that's a broad spectrum of religious, interfaith and religious persons, and it's not just those who are in favor of marriage equality, but those, again, who can come together and be supportive of civil rights because of their religious convictions around social justice.
And Phil, didn't you earlier make a comment about Coretta King?
That's right. The late Coretta Scott King was one of the signatories to the Freedom to Marry petition. And she publicly stated that she believed that this commitment to full inclusion of GLBT persons in American society was in direct line with her late husband's struggle in the civil rights movement, and that that no one is free when anyone is oppressed. And so that there really is seen that civil rights are civil rights, human rights are human rights. We don't distinguish between who they're for and who they aren't. They're for everybody.
Well, it's inspiring to know we're in good company.
That's right.
So what can we do for this coming election? How can we prepare? How can we get the word out?
Well, each group is going to have their own avenues. Colorado Stonewall Democrats, of course, will be approaching the gay community itself, as well as the Democratic Party and all the candidates. We will be seeking endorsements from the party, which, as I said earlier, we received today, from the candidates who are running for office, and then within the community, from the business part of our community, as well as every other organization in our community. Individuals can help a great deal by calling Coloradans for fairness and equality, and their number is, I understand, being displayed somewhere.
It's going to be on the bulletin board.
Okay. And they will be ever so happy to involve people in phone calling and canvassing and in gathering signatures. Remember, we need that little petition signed for that little item that says domestic partnership is not marriage. Okay. So we're going to be prepared so that if Mr. Perkins and Mr. Lundberg step into the Secretary of State's office at 4 o'clock on the final day, we will be sitting there with our same 100,000 signatures and go immediately to the desk. But to do that, we will need the help of all of the community and all of those who are allies in this cause. It's not just the gay community, it's not just Democrats. It's the religious community, the interfaith community, it's Republicans, and it's independents. And all of them, we need assistance from all of them. Coloradans for Fairness and Equality would accept willingly all the help they can get.
I bet. What is your organization going to be doing for this November election?
Well, one of the primary areas where we will focus are endorsements from religious congregations. We'll continue to grow our membership in Colorado Clergy for Equality in Marriage, and also work with other clergy who may not be with us in terms of marriage equality, but in terms of their own social justice commitments, can support domestic partnerships. And so we'll continue to work primarily within the religious community. And one of the primary things I think we can do is really speak out and say it is because of our faith, not in spite of it, that we're committed to civil rights and social justice in our country. That's an important word to get out, and so I think we play a role that way, so that people know that there are a variety of religious perspectives, and the one often in many mainstream expressions that is portrayed as the religious position is never mine. And I'm religious, and so that's what we can do, is make sure that the religious voice, the progressive religious voice, is heard as we move toward the election as well.
So that all voices are heard.
That's right.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you both for joining us tonight. It's been very illuminating. I'm getting excited for November to get here. I'll definitely do my part. Thank you both, and I'll see you in November.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Good to be here.
And watch the bulletin board so that you can sign up for help. Thanks very much.